Prairie.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Kvamme.
Here.
Osowski.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
We have a full house and a quorum.
Perfect. Item number 2 is True Weather Solutions conversion option.
Thank you. You have a very brief staff report. The upshot is True Weather, who was just approved for their Accelerate loan last September. Theirs was only $100,000. They have given us the attached notice that they are doing an equity raise. And so we are again given the offer to exercise our option to convert. Our staff recommendation is to not exercise that option, but True Weather has said that they would like to repay the loan pretty much as soon as possible. So that's the recommendation, is not convert, not sign this agreement, but just let it lapse and then await repayment of the loan in full. You talked to?
I talked to the CFO and just asked them what their preference would be, and they said it's. I just found an email over $7 million raise, and they would just prefer to pay it off. And obviously, there's the opportunity for a win, but I guess it's always been the zero opinions that matter. But roll it into the next deal, we get it back. So they are very willing to do that once they close it. And I was quickly trying to find the time horizon on that. It's soon, but I don't have a date for you.
Perfect.
Do they already have that funding already secured?
No, they're
You guys
raising.
close
They're
on
going to be
they're
closing.
raising it. Okay.
Yeah,
Do they have reasonable assurance that they're going to actually raise that?
they're very confident.
Okay.
That is what I'll
That's,
describe.
just want to make sure, so we weren't, coming in. I guess it wouldn't really matter if we decided not to convert and we would just sit same time frame anyway. We just wait and get paid when we get paid.
Further comments? None. Is there a motion to not convert?
So moved.
Moved by Prairie, second by Kvamme. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 3 is past due loan update. This is informational.
That's Andy.
We've got a couple past due loans that just to again kind of keep you guys apprised of, as we've talked about in the past. One is one that we've brought forward before, which is Amy's Place, which is one of our startups. If you'll recall, when she first came forward, I think it was end of last year, early January, we mentioned alongside Mobile Recon that she would come forward and sort of just give an update, give you guys a sense of things. You guys had mentioned at the time that we're fine kind of deferring payments in the interim until we hear from her, but we'd like to ask more questions. Wasn't able to make it to last month's meeting due to scheduling conflict. Gave her the date of this meeting early February, several emails, a couple phone calls, haven't been able to get in touch since then. So that's where that one currently stands now. We also have another startup, Valley Tech Pros, is now, I believe, closing in on 4 months past due. They have been making payments with us. They also have a C-run loan for us. Both sit at, I don't have the figures in front of me, roughly, I think, $13,000 on each of those loans, startup and C-run. Like I said, they were making payments, timely payments, up until the end of last year. As I understand it, the owner is they're pivoting business models. The owner's dealing with some health concerns. They're pivoting business models, so they have closed their physical location on Demers Avenue. And as I understand it, their new business model is they're going to try just doing kind of pickup delivery. He'll do the repairs at his place, his home, and then pick up and deliver the whatever item it is that he's repairing in the interim. So where that currently sits now, we're going back and forth with them. We have been in contact with them and trying to figure out what a preferred approach looks like, what amounts to a restructure request looks like, and bringing it back to this body. But in the absence of that, and again, factoring in the Amy's Place one, and kind of seeing that we're starting to have, or at least have in the recent months, had a couple startups kind of come back with less than ideal, repayment patterns as of late. Want to get a sense from this group as to what kind of, if there's a consensus at all, as to what kind of information or what such a restructure request you'd like to look like, what kind of questions, if any, you want us to be reaching out to these folks with. Anything.
So, thank you, Andy. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, they're different situations here, right? Because, I mean, I think this body has stated before, like, please communicate with us and we're willing to work with you. And it sounds like that's what's happening with Valley Tech Pros. The Amy's Place one seems a little different because we've had these spells of zero communication. So I'm more concerned about that one. Personally, I don't know if there's a one size fits all approach to these loans that we should take. It's frustrating that US staff are having to spend so much time as debt collectors. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me. I can't imagine how it feels for you. I don't know. I mean, is there a request from
We've got,
Valley Tech Pros at this point in terms?
they have
what it might look like?
kind of framed out a rough, it's still not an official one, and that's what we're working with them on, is we're looking for them and what we've done in the past, and we don't have a standard policy for the startup program as to what we require for a restructure request or anything like that. What we've taken for previous growth, like flex-based loans, for example, is we request a formal restructure letter from them, basically spell out why, what you're asking, what you're asking the restructure to be, and kind of justify why do you think, why is this going to work, why is this feasible, that sort of thing. Beyond that, typically, I think there haven't been a ton in my time with the city, but it doesn't seem out of the realm of pragmatism, I guess, to ask for some kind of, particularly in startup, is ask for some kind of documentation or demonstrate why this proposed restructure works. And as we've talked about it, we send them to SBDC on the front end of these projects now for a reason, because they're not traditionally bankable deals. So asking for some level of projections, even though they are just projections, gives us something to look back at to demonstrate, okay, this business will cash flow, they can pay this loan back, that kind of thing. We had brainstormed kind of, and we haven't, full disclosure, I guess we haven't been able to talk to folks at SBDC yet as to whether or not this is a function that they'd be able or willing to perform. But our thought is to reach out to them, and if they're willing, send prospective restructure requesters back to SBDC to run the numbers again, basically knowing what they know now with their business, what they say currently with their business, and knowing what their outstanding debts are with us, run a new set of projections to benefit both us and frankly them, to see whether or not this is actually realistic, if this will actually work. We know that that these loans are even with the security agreement on some of are essentially only secured against the business. So if there is no business, there's not much there. And I guess as I'm referring to these as the past two loans I'm talking about, these two is just the startup BC and Valley Tech Pros. It also does have that C-run loan with us, which also, as I understand it from them, would be something they'd be looking to restructure. That one we are personally guaranteed against from the business owner, I believe his father. So that's sort of, they want those to be brought forward and considered, I think, together when they do have a formal request. But like I said, in advance of that, and that's what we're hoping to frame out for next month's meeting, is have a formal request from them, what they'd like to, or what their proposal is. And again, just kind of take your temperature as to what kind of documentation or to what extent you want that restructure request to look like. Because like I said, we don't have a standing policy for that on startup right now.
I did see some head nods about sending them to SBDC.
I like that idea.
I mean,
Personally,
Assuming that they're willing to do that. Just
if
based on
if the
that,
Grand
but-
Forks SBDC would be willing to do that, I mean, if there's one thing that they're really strong with, it's financial projections and financial modeling. That's one of the things the SBDC is really good and
Right.
strong with, amongst many other things, but it is one of their strengths. So, I think having them have a look at it wouldn't be a bad idea, given that that's a
Yeah.
strength.
We get put in the position of the borrowers asking for our help in putting together a restructuring request, and that doesn't really fit well.
No,
Yeah.
It's
So-
not what you're trained to do.
I would
And
agree.
it's a
I
bit of a
think,
conflict of interest.
businesses, successful businesses or those that aspire to be so, they need to work with different partners. I would say that the SBDC is a great resource for that, and I would encourage them to do it. To me, there should be a formal request and letter. Here's what we would like to have happen. And that should be backed by some type of projections from the SBDC that shows this is the plan that it's gonna work.
Mhm.
And I would look at both of all debt
Mhm.
at the same time, because it's a fully encompassing plan. So this is Plan B. What does it look like with some numbers and some stuff to look at? For any businesses that will not communicate, you know, to me, what we should be doing is understanding if we do, what options do we have?
Mhm.
And at some point, a communication to those borrowers that say, if you do not respond by this date with your updated plan,
This is what.
then this is what's going to happen. That would be my encouragement to us as a team that we're in that situation.
That's helpful, because you know, that's both on that front, communicating like, you know, we must hear from you, or this will having that as a back end is helpful. The other piece is that, you know, in not having a standard or a standard policy for, again, just talking flex space or startup rather. Yeah, there's, I think, been just some, you know, folks are inherently not in a great spot financial, a lot of stress and stuff with this, and without being able to provide some level of certainty as to this is what we're looking for from you, I think there's some hesitancy or some apprehension as to like, well, what information do I need to provide? What do I need to do? Like, I'm trying to figure this out as we go. So that's kind of the hope, is if we can provide that clarity of formal letters required from you explaining, you know, what your proposal is and why it's going to work, backed by some kind of SBDC project or some kind of documentation to demonstrate that it'll work. That's what we're looking for. And if we can provide that and say, this is what the committee is asking for, or it doesn't consider your restructure request. And that's sort of the, maybe a follow-up question is, you know, if not this, then what? Like, what is the, or what sort of thing? And we can say like, or it's going to the committee with a recommendation to call the loan. We can do that. I mean, it's just kind of trying to take your guys' temperature on that sort of thing as to what degree of, you know, or what's the consequence for some of this stuff.
You've typically been pretty sympathetic to these individuals who show up, so we don't want to take too harsh a stance,
Right.
but it is consuming a lot of hand-holding time.
Yeah, it really would help if they
Late.
would just come in. But I mean, I think it's pretty indicative too of those, you know, whether valid reasons or not, if they keep dancing around it. And I think the writing's on the wall where, I mean, I don't think you guys want to be wasting all your time either of that. I mean, we had the understanding, and that's part of the reason why we're, you know, pumping the brakes on startup, but understanding that they're unbankable, you know, businesses. So there is an inherent level of risk. And if people, kind of like to Chris's point, you know, if they're not, you know, if they're trying to start a business, they're going to do, and they really want to, they're going to do everything they can to make it work. If they're already, if it's pretty indicative, if they're not doing that, there's probably a pretty decent chance they're not going to try to make it work. And that, unfortunately, what that means is that they're probably going to default and that we won't get that money back. I mean, at some point, we got to realize that too.
Yeah, I'd rather know that sooner.
Right.
than later.
And have you guys be with,
Time.
yep,
And so to me, it's a matter of what happened. Kind of a little bit, it shouldn't be a daunting task for people that feel like it's a huge pride, but what happened? What's your next plan? Some numbers that show what's different. I think we're all trying to be reasonable and we want to, what plans don't always work, but what's the new plan?
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of, I think we should probably, at what point, you know, when someone's past due, are they miss one payment, is it two payments? I don't know.
Yeah, we
There's
have,
room to discuss, but I mean, at some point, you've got to get to, at this point, here's what we want.
Mhm.
And
There needs to be some triggers, you know.
To trigger,
120
when-
days default and non-communication for 60
Plans
days.
not
or
work.
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
And we can list
It should
those
just
out.
be a
Yeah.
pretty easy thing and then.
right.
Yeah, I can do that.
Call it,
Sure.
you know,
Okay.
that way you don't have to rack your brains.
And if they're in communication, I think, I honestly think we can even spell it out that they get a little more like time before they're in default. Like, you know, you miss 2 months and they don't give any valid reason as to why or anything, then, then that triggers default. I don't know legally you get, you know, have different sets of structures for default, but
Yeah,
That's all
we have,
intent.
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I mean, trying to just get to the point sooner. Like, are you trying to make this
work? He's been communicating with
Right.
Hayes, their new business model. and
Right.
I know. it, you know,
Right,
for sure.
right. So that's their intent then. And
Yeah.
somebody else, if they're not even communicates, like, okay, we'd rather know sooner rather than later, just keep going forward here.
I've heard Valley Tech Pros several times. How many businesses are in this situation?
Right now, we have,
How much money are we talking?
we have ones without sort of where we're trying to find a resolution, I guess, or a way forward. We have the two with Valley Tech Pros and Amy's Place. Those are the two that are sitting right now. We're working towards a resolution. What I'm hearing here is Amy's Place, the situation being what it's being, is moving forward with the city attorney on that front. And, you know, it's a default essentially of the loan agreement. It already is, but it's pursuing or exploring what our options are on that front in terms of collecting. If we hear any kind of, you know, all of a sudden she comes back and here's my new plan for bringing it forward, we can certainly bring that to the group. I suspect that she's not going to want the loan to just be called, and when I relay that this is lack of communication has led to this, I suspect she'll have a counter or something like that, in which case we can, you know, bring forward this item on an ongoing basis, so we can relay that to you guys.
There needs to be a consequence for poor communication.
Right.
So you have both
Yeah.
startup
Yes.
and C-Run?
Amy's Place is just the startup. 30,000, I believe is, don't quote me on that. That I believe is 30. Don't even take that figure. I can figure that out. But while I do that,
Valley Tech?
that is roughly, I believe, last check was about 13,000 in outstanding balance for startup, and a similar balance on the C-Run. They do have a C-Run loan. And like I mentioned, that one is the startup loan is secured against only the business, as is the case with those loans. The C-Run loan does have personal guarantees attached to it. So like I said, they're going to want they'll bring forward a request, and we'll ask that they demonstrate in a letter exactly what the proposal is for both of those loans, back it by some kind of documentation if we can to show that this is going to work, and all the things Chris outlined there.
So 25 or 30,000 for one, 25, 30,000 for the other, all total. And how much C-Run we put out? $2 million? How much did you?
1.39.
1.39.
Yeah, roughly, I think it ended up being 1.45 in the end.
And startup, how much do we have out all total on startup? I don't know, but this is a pretty small percentage of all those.
Yeah, 30,000.
There's a good chunk of it that's still, it's not,
And
it's still in deferral,
good
right?
chunk is in
Yeah.
borrowing.
For
Okay.
C-Run.
Yeah, C-Run.
But
We
C-Run,
should still have this process for you.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And C-Run's a little different too, in that we have quite a few small borrowers and quite a few large borrowers too.
Right.
I mean, we
Right.
have some loans that are about 20,000 or so, some that are 200,000. So, yeah.
the C-Run is all Fed dollars that essentially as it rolls over, rolls into our pots.
Right.
Correct.
The good ones, yeah.
So anything you would, in theory, if you were to write off anything with those federal dollars, that doesn't obviously revolve back in. It also affects our risk rating with the EDA and a few other things like that too.
Yeah, they certainly have their own policies and stuff for you know, collecting and all that stuff that.
So there were no strings attached, but there were some strings.
Well, the better we do, the fewer reports we have to submit. So it behooves us on many levels to have a strong C-Run portfolio. So,
So anyway, that's where those ones sit. Like I said, I'll part of, I think getting to this was just not having like a clear policy or whatever on our side as to what exactly to communicate. And again, we've been sympathetic in certain situations, which is easier to do when there's communication, which I'm more than happy to relay. And we'll come back next month with hopefully, fleshed out policy or fleshed out restructure requests from both borrowers ideally, and if not, hopefully at least one. And
we'll have mobile recon, because
yeah,
on a different loan program, they've been in
Yeah.
that same kind of request, promise,
mhm,
failed to complete.
right.
And
They
then-
have a voicemail from Michael Dell waiting for me downstairs. I did email them earlier this week. Last time I think we came through, he gave his presentation sort of outlining where he was with things. And, ultimately at that time he was hoping mid-February he could draw on some of those funds, get caught up by March 1st and start payments March 1st. And I sent him an email about a week ago, asking, okay, like now's that time, like where are we at? And I haven't heard back. And I imagine that's what the voicemail speaks to, but I don't have an update for you on that yet. But I'll have updates on all three of those for you next month.
I have a guess.
More to come on all.
Bring in one big
but
check, right?
Appreciate that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
A big one of those cardboard
Yeah,
checks,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
All right. Further committee member comments? Okay, I think that's all for our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Osowski, second by Whitney. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned.